I'm your host, Annie Bowles, and this is News du Jour. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the News du Jour. I have to apologize here at the top of the episode. I am so sorry, you guys. Devin and I were obviously across the country for a wedding this past weekend, and we were just not able to make it back in time to record Monday's episode. So I was super bummed to miss the day, but we'll just have to do a little longer episode for you guys today to catch up. Let's dig in. So first up, we are discussing Kim K and the S.E.C. So most of us probably know by now, you've got to be really careful when you're doling out financial advice, and especially when you're doing so on the internet. That's why with banks, there's always a ton of paperwork, disclaimers, fine print, etc. People are pissed when they lose money, and no one wants to be on the other end of a legal battle against someone they gave bad advice to. And that's exactly where Miss Kim Kardashian has landed herself today. Except when she gives out financial advice on the internet, she doesn't just give it out to, her close family and friends, but her community of over 331 million social media followers. But the even bigger issue here is when influencers are being paid to promote anything, they really need to let people know that their advice is being bought and paid for. It's the law. The S.E.C, also known as the Securities and Exchange Commission, is the one who sets these types of rules and laws. And back in June of 2021, it seems that Kim K posted something that violated these rules and regulations set forth by the S.E.C. She posted promoting a crypto token sold by the company Ethereum Max. She promoted this token as a good investment, but what she did not tell her followers was that she was accepting hundreds of thousands of dollars to endorse them, saying, quote, "This is not financial advice, but sharing what my friends have told me about the Ethereum Max token," end quote. So the S.E.C settled with her for $1.26 million and says that she cooperated throughout their investigation. It's definitely been possible that they are making an example out of her, if that makes sense, showing celebrities that they need to be selective when taking on partnerships and, of course, following the rules and regulations outlined by the S.E.C. Noted. I also, while we are on the subject, wanted to let you guys know that Kim actually just launched her podcast yesterday called The System. And I believe she's going to be using this platform she's building to spotlight injustices within our legal system, which seems to be the main reason she's going through the law school process right now. I can't wait to tune in and see what it's all about. So I saw it on Spotify. I don't know if it's on all streaming platforms, but it's definitely there. So check it out with me. Let's see what we think. And then next up for today, this is a really intense story, and I wanted to go ahead and issue a content warning here. This story does involve some traumatic deaths. So a soccer match in Indonesia turned very deadly. It happened pretty quickly, it sounds like, with 125 people being killed in a soccer stadium. Let's get into what happened, and I'll go ahead and start with a little background info for you guys to really set the scene here. So first off, in many areas of the world outside of the US, soccer is a huge deal. Most of those places will call it football, though, just to confuse us. Just kidding. Football really makes more sense for the name of a game of soccer. You know, you're using your feet. But anyway, I digress. Over in Indonesia, a long string of islands, badminton is actually their big sport over there, but soccer is also extremely popular. On an average weekend, 52 million Indonesians will tune into a soccer match. But deaths are really rare at these games. So what exactly happened here? Well, here's what went down. The home team lost 3-2, so a really tight match, and it was unexpected. And when this happened, fans of the opposing team rushed the field in their excitement. And I'm not sure how intense the rivalry is between these two teams. Not much has been said on that subject, and I had trouble finding information about that given how much news there is about this. But in the stadium with over 42,000 people seated, a ton of people were flocking to this field. One thing led to another, and some sort of unrest began, for lack of a better term. I don't really know what started everything, but people were pushing and shoving. And like we know from the Travis Scott incident, things can escalate really quickly in these scenarios where there's large crowds and large emotions. And that's exactly what happened. But then the police came in. And they started using tear gas. And in retrospect, everyone is questioning this decision because a stadium is kind of an enclosed space to a certain extent. And the chemicals just did not dissipate the way that they would out on an open street. And also, on top of that, people had nowhere to go to get away from the gases. Like if someone's using tear gas in a street, they can run away from it, but they're already trapped in this scenario. And then adding the tear gas on top of that, they're trapped in the tear gas. This all ended up leading to one of the deadliest incidents in the history of soccer. 125 people at least ended up dying in that stadium. Most of their deaths were related to the tear gas used on the crowds, and the bodies are still being identified now. I also read that at least four people, one of them being a child, died in the locker rooms of the stadium where the players tried to pull people out of the gas and out of being trampled. They tried to pull these injured people to help them, and 4 of them died in the players' arms. 300 more people were injured, and many of those were sent to the hospital. And I wanted to prepare you guys because the death toll may rise here after the fact when people die in hospital. Honestly, the descriptions of this event really reminded me a lot of the Travis Scott Astroworld debacle. People said it was, quote, anarchy, end quote, and that they can, quote, still hear the people screaming, end quote. Our hearts go out to everyone who was hurt and all the families of those who died. This is a horrible tragedy and hopefully a reminder that tear gas should only be used as a last resort. And next up for you guys today, I wanted to give you a quick Russia update. So I didn't know how to write this. This is just, it almost has me laughing. It's like, terrifying and horrible. And yet it's almost, if it wasn't so serious, it would be funny because Putin is officially in la la land, you guys. He is gone bye-bye. Not literally, but more mentally. On Friday, he declared that 4 regions of Ukraine were officially, quote unquote, part of Russia. 2 days later, his troops had to retreat from a major city in those regions. So his signature on pieces of paper really means nothing in reality. And it's honestly a little terrifying how out of touch he's really become. And what's the most scary maybe is that his speech after signing these annexation documents positioned the war as one against the West, quote unquote. Woof. But our leadership over here is not rattled by his rhetoric, obviously. He will keep living in his la-la land, and we will keep helping Ukraine defeat the Russians as quickly as we can. And that's the update there. And then I wanted to touch on, before we go, just that the country is still obviously reeling from Hurricane Ian. So no official death toll has been announced from Hurricane Ian as of yet. Obviously, the damage was so severe. Cleanup is going to take a long time. Rescue is going to take a long time. So just bear with me here. But we do already know of at least 35 deaths being related to Hurricane Ian in Florida alone. I also heard, and don't quote me on this one, guys, because this is something I didn't research very thoroughly and maybe for tomorrow's episode, but I heard that Cuba was requesting aid from the United States, which is crazy because, you know, we have a long history of animosity between us. So that was crazy. I'll definitely look into that, but things must be pretty dire in Cuba right now for them to be asking for our help. But I also wanted to let you guys know that Biden will be visiting the areas ravaged by Hurricane Ian. But first, he's going to be headed to Puerto Rico because if you remember, they had a hurricane just before Ian. So they were hit first and they're back underwater. You know, hopefully most of the electricity has been restored, but President Biden will be visiting Puerto Rico, and then he'll head over to Florida, and then he'll head over to South Carolina from there to survey the damage and help out and figure out the best way to get funds into the hands of the local leadership. Speaking of, Governor Ron DeSantis said that he would support legislation for additional federal funding, but only if that was all that the legislation would do. He made it clear that he didn't want anyone using this tragedy for political gain. And to that we say, amen. And that is the news du jour. Today, I wanted to leave you guys with the quote, "Good judgment comes from experience, and a lot of experience comes from bad judgment." If you enjoyed this episode, please consider becoming a patron of our podcast. For $7.99 a month, you can unlock tons of perks like breaking news text messages so that you're never out of the loop. Tons of bonus episodes are already up there ready for you to binge, and a discussion board full of networking opportunities and much more. Go to www.patreon.com/sugarfreemedia today to become a patron. This is the best way to support our show. Our patrons make News du Jour possible. But a couple other ways to support our podcast are rate and review on whatever podcast platform you use to listen, share on your social media, you have influence, tell your friends, family, and colleagues that you love News du Jour and why you listen. You can also follow us on social media under sugarfreemedia.co on Instagram, just sugarfreemedia, all one word, on TikTok, and sugarfree_media on Twitter. We also have a weekend newsletter called Dreamers Digest that's full of dreamy content recommendations for your weekend and a life update from yours truly. Sign up today on our website, www.sugarfreemedia.co. Our music is by Joey Lavoie and Nicholas Foster. Our cover art is by Hannah Pierce Photography. Our Sugar Free Media logo is by Catherine Jezik Designs. Any twinkling or little footsteps you might hear in the background are by my dog, Rhett. He's a rescue pup and always records with me. We appreciate you listening and look forward to telling you about the news again next time on News du Jour.
Broadcasting from Oklahoma.